All right, and we're live. Welcome to the Raw Food Health Empowerment Show. If you feel like everyone thinks you've lost it just because you've gone high raw vegan, especially your Jamaican family, then you're in the right place because we're going to be talking about it today. What if I told you the way you're eating might be the exact thing that protects your brain for the long haul? You've done your research, switched up your lifestyle, and you've committed to nourishing your body naturally. But somehow the backlash from family, the side eyes at dinner, and the endless questions like, so you don't eat cooked food at all, make you wonder if you're the one missing something, right? But you're not. You're ahead of the curve. What if the traditional Jamaican diet, while rooted in healing, which we'll talk about what all those aspects are, has been hijacked by modern habits, adding the very things your body and your brain needs to subtract? The traditional Jamaican diet is rich, flavorful, and deeply rooted in cultural history, blending African, European, Indian, and indigenous influences. It tends to center around hearty cooked meals using fresh local ingredients, which I would consider very healthy, like staying local, staying fresh, right? Because when the food has to travel a far way, you start to, experience some nutrient depletion. Now, I have here with me my guest, my special guest as always, and co-host, my mom, who is from Jamaica, West Indies. And how would you explain where you're from, to somebody who knows Jamaica, right?
Well, for anyone who knows Jamaica, I am from Catadupa, St. James. It's 22 miles from Montego Bay. Montego Bay is our town.
Okay.
That's how I
That's how
explain
you
it.
would explain it.
Yes.
Okay. So, in terms of the staples, right? Like the breakdown of what the traditional Jamaican diet looks like. The main thing I would say is definitely rice and peas, right? So that's rice with kidney beans or gunga peas cooked in coconut milk. Now, back in the day, right, when grandma was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you already went on like that kind of pushed you in a direction of making some changes to how you were preparing meals. You were preparing meals for everybody in the family, including grandma, and we basically was all on this change together, right? Because
Yeah.
you was only cooking once, you know. So tell me about the rice and peas, because I think like that was one of the first changes you made uh there,
Okay.
right?
Well, yes. She used to make rice and peas, and she could make the best. For anyone who know my mom,
Mm-hmm.
she could make the best tasting rice and peas. But later on, I get to understand that coconut milk was not good to consume. And that drove me up the wall. I was so concerned. So I stopped using coconut and I started making my rice and peas without coconut.
Okay. And what did you use instead?
I put a little olive oil and because then they tell you olive oil was the best. I put a little olive oil and I season it the same way she used to season hers,
Yeah.
which is the season that she uses is just right up my alley.
Okay,
Um,
so you went from the coconut milk,
yes.
which is saturated fat, right? Um, and I remember you went from like because there was a period you did still use coconut milk, but you would make it from like a mature coconut. I remember you would get the
Oh, yeah,
mature
right. But when they say
and
that
make it
coconut,
fresh instead of it coming from a can.
no, I never use canned milk, and she never used canned milk either.
Okay.
Never. No, never. Um, that was something foreign to her because she's coming. My mom came to this country at a young age, right? But I came here younger than her. I think she was like, I don't remember, must be 40 something years old when she came here. Or
Hmm.
maybe maybe a little younger than that. But no, 40 something years old, yeah. But she using canned stuff was something foreign to my mom. She
Yeah.
never liked out of a can. She'll pay 35 cents on the bus at the time, 35 cents to buy a coconut for 10 cents. That's how my mom would shop because she want the real thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I hear that the coconut wasn't good, so I stopped using coconut. Then nobody liked my rice and peas because it wasn't tasting like mom rice and peas. Because the coconut did give it a beautiful flavor.
Yeah, but you like the rice and peas.
Yeah, I liked it, but I was very conscious of what I heard about the coconut milk. That
Yeah.
the oil from it don't get out of your system and all that. I was very concerned, so I stopped using it for a
Okay.
while.
So there's that, right? And you made a statement just now about the oil because you're on a journey of no oil right now, right?
Yeah,
But and this is why, like, when it comes to nutrition, what's you have healthy foods, obviously fiber rich, whole foods, as much raw as possible. This is all considered healthy. And there's some foods that some folks wouldn't consider um, unhealthy, but for some people it is unhealthy, right? And you can make a case that they're healthy foods, but not for everybody, right? And oil is one of them that like lands in the middle where yes, some people can get away with having oil, possibly, potentially, and other people it's not serving them in this moment, right? So there's
right.
just that differentiation. It's not saying necessarily like it's bad for you, you're gonna die from it. No, that's not what we're saying. This you take a it's important to take a bio individual approach when it comes to nutrition because each of us are dealing with something different. We have different microbiomes, and different stuff going on. So okay, so that's the number one staple is rice and peas, like that across the board. Every Jamaican, that's what
Rice
they
and
eat.
peas.
Okay, then you have dumpling, which is boiled or fried. Okay, now what say you, Ma, on the dumplings?
I'm not a dumpling person. I'm not a dumpling person, and I usually love dumpling, but over the years, because I don't like fried food, so I don't do dumplings. I'm
Okay.
not a person.
Yes. And you say you don't like fried food, and I think that came originally from what? Like, what had you concerned about fried foods?
Before I even understand that it wasn't good for you, I got turned off from fried food when I used to see people when I was in the salon and people would bring stuff from the Chinese restaurant and everything was fried and it
Mm-hmm.
looked very disgusting to me. So it's not that I never usually do fried dumpling in my home. Yes, I usually do, but I cut it out completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So what we know specifically about fried foods, why it's not necessarily the best, is because it's high in advanced glycation end products.
Mhm.
And that basically means that cellularly you are aging faster than necessary, right? Things are slowing down, they're gumming up. I've had clients in their 60s tell me, man, I wish I could just eat like I used to eat in my 20s and nothing happened. I didn't have all these aches and pains and inflammation. And that's because at that time you didn't have such high accumulation of advanced glycation end products. But the more fried and processed foods and meat, dairy, eggs that we eat, we have now a high accumulation of these advanced glycation end products, and it does have an effect on the body. Basically, it is accelerating the aging process on a cellular level. So you have your chronological age, but then you also have a cellular age, a biological age, right? You've probably seen on like The Biggest Loser and some of these places where they're like, oh, your body's at an age blah blah blah, and it doesn't match their actual chronological
Right.
age.
Yeah.
That's where
Yes.
that is coming from.
Mhm.
So that's the thing with the dumplings, right? I remember, and we're gonna get later into it. Festival, because festival, I got onto festival pretty late, so I didn't get to enjoy it that long. But I couldn't
But
imagine eating that stuff now because for me personally, I know that this thing, even boiled dumpling in soup, which is a healthier way to have dumpling. If you're gonna have dumpling, it's better boiled than fried, right? But and that's fine. I mean, I think I would still have that now, just not in high regular quantities. That's like a
No.
once a year. Maybe we're in Jamaica or we're having some family
Exactly.
gathering, and then I am stuffing my face with lots of leafy greens so it can go down.
Can I say something on that topic?
Yeah.
It's not every soup you put dumpling in. The only soup, because the fact that I only eat plant-based stuff, the only food I put dumpling in is the 16 bean soup.
Hmm.
They call it pea soup. That's the only soup I'd put dumpling in, but not in any other soup.
Because
Because I don't do meat. I don't make beef soup. I don't make,
oh, just
so,
because of you.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, yeah.
But I'm saying if you're making a bean soup, yeah, and I don't do the white flour. If I'm gonna do white flour, I put just maybe 1 spoon all the wheat together.
Yeah,
But
that's a
very,
a good point because you can make the dumpling. Traditionally, it's made using white flour, which we know white flour is no good because it's basically sugar, right? Which is gonna cause inflammation in the body, cause inflammation in the brain. So you now instead you use wheat flour, whole wheat flour.
whole wheat flour, not just inflammation alone, but
Hmm.
it also causes constipation because of that hard flour.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the thing constipation, I see as like a multifaceted thing because there are many reasons why somebody would be constipated from some of these things, and that's why I said earlier, like if I were to have dumpling to get it down, right? Because this stuff is so dry, you know, it's it's bread. It's very dense bread, basically, and in order to if you're gonna have all that kind of like bread and starch and things, you have to balance it with greens, with vegetables, and lots of water, and people aren't drinking enough water, so yeah, things get stuck. And then if you add on top of that meat, dairy, eggs, because saturated fat, the fat itself has slows down gastric emptying, so the whole digestive process gets slowed down, and now you have this bread that basically, when people say I want food that sticks to my ribs, this is the breads. It's the grains, they're gonna stick to your ribs, and all that stuff gets slowed down, so to the point, especially when you're adding meat on top, it may get stuck in these little crevices because our intestines, is so long, it's winding, has these little
Yeah.
crevices
Right.
and things. Okay, so another staple, ground provisions. That's the yam, green banana, breadfruit, cassava, dasheen, sweet potato, right? Now, so far, everything we've been talking about, and I have to mention bami. I thought bami was Trini and Guyanese. I didn't realize that Jamaica, had bami too, because that wasn't part of my
Bami
diet.
and fish. Bami and fish.
That's how they would eat it, right? And
Bami
bami
and
is basically a cassava flatbread.
right. How they do
Um,
the process with it? You do it just like coconut. You grate it and get
mhm.
out all the milk from it. Because the milk from the bami, that's the part that's not good for you. You got to get rid of that.
The
And
milk
you
from
got,
the bami. And you're saying that because you're concerned about starch. You call it
well,
milk because it's
really,
white.
no, I think that's the one that you don't consume too much of that stuff. You're not supposed to consume too much of the milk from the bami. I don't know
Why?
the reason for that. I don't know.
Okay, that's your homework to research it and come back to us next time.
I think we went over that before because I
I
said
think it's I think you're talking about the starch.
I was
Because
always
cassava
concerned
is a
about
starchy
very
vegetable.
starchy, and so is cocoa. And they have another one named Edos, which is badu, and
Okay.
yam. Those are very starchy food.
Now, when we're talking about the world of metabolic wellness, right? Uh, Keeping our blood sugar balance. There's really no need to be afraid of starchy vegetables. Obviously, your whole diet's not going to be it, but I think that's what we've had conversations about on the show, is that there's no need to be concerned. Obviously, the the combination of meat and starch, yes, this may have been a concern at some point. But I would put more of the issue on the meat creating inflammation in the body, based on the evidence, the scientific evidence that we have available to us right now. Because you can have all of these starchy foods and have very healthy hemoglobin A1C, right? Healthy blood sugar balance. Depending on how you are preparing the food, right? Bami is a fried thing, no? I don't know. I never had it. You bake it.
Okay, you bake it, but Jamaicans enjoy everything fried.
Okay.
So they bake it. See, I usually they bake it, and when it bakes, you put it down for a while. When you get ready to fry it, you soak it now in milk
Okay.
and then fry it.
Which obviously now, because milk is, throws hormones out of whack, right? It causes a lot of hormonal disruption. It doesn't matter which health practitioner you go to, everybody of every dietary orientation, we all agree milk is no good. And then from a vegan standpoint, the only way you get milk is by raping cows, right? So from an ethical standpoint, it's no good, right? So when we take out the dairy now, you have almond milk, right, that you could use. You have coconut milk that you could use if you want to, which seems, I would think, would be more
But I think the bami is nice
equivalent.
frying it though, because when you finish bake it, you can just have it just like that.
Yeah, baked bami. Well, I never had bami, so I don't know what to compare it to. All right, then in Jamaican cuisine, you get into what people consider the proteins. And the reason why I do this is because what I would love, and I would love all of us as a group to pray for humanity, so humanity can understand this. This is such a big thing. We all need to be in prayer, okay? There's no such thing as protein deficiency as long as you're eating enough calories for your body to function. Because your body's intelligent. It doesn't even need to only get quote unquote complete proteins, right? Like quinoa is touted as a complete protein, but your body is intelligent. So if you have rice and peas, right? Jamaican having some rice and peas, as long as you're eating enough food overall, rice and peas, and you add some we didn't even get to callaloo, but callaloo, whatever, you have your dumpling, your sweet potato, whatever you're adding.
And cabbage. Don't forget
Cabbage, whatever, right? As long as you're having enough for the day, all of the proteins that's available in these foods, because all these foods have protein and all these foods have fat, okay? They all have fat, okay?
And I'm so glad you bring that up, because Jamaican have a way of asking, where do you get your protein from?
Yeah, everybody, And as long as you are eating and not starving yourself, right, you will get protein. You will get all the protein you need. So you just want to make sure you're eating enough, because even at rest, you are burning calories. Your brain specifically is taking up a lot of those calories, right? Just to function, to regulate your breathing, your heartbeat, all that stuff. It takes energy, and that's what calories are. It's a measurement of energy. So as long as you're eating enough, you are getting protein, okay? You don't have to eat another being, another animal, flesh, in order to get protein, right? This is a misunderstanding of nutrition science, and we just need to pray for our brothers and sisters that they get this, that they understand this, that they cannot, unless you are in a situation where you are literally in starvation from not having enough food for months. Yes, you will end up in protein deficiency, right? But in America, in the Western world, that's not even possible, right? That's like it's not, Yes, we have food pantries, we have all these things, we have churches, all these people giving out food, all sorts of stuff, even if it's trash food, you get in the there are people who are eating nothing but junk food, and they don't have protein deficiency, right? Which tells me you don't even need a healthy diet in order to get adequate amounts of protein. It's just a matter of, are you getting adequate energy? You know what I'm saying? Obviously, they're still nutritionally depleted because of a lot of different mechanisms. But anyway, back to what Jamaicans would traditionally call the protein side of the dish. That's saltfish,
And ackee.
yes, ackee and saltfish, which you can do the ackee without the saltfish, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
and I hope what you're picking up from listening to this is that, I am a proud Jamaican American. I was born in America. My mom's a proud Jamaican. We haven't laid down or thrown out our culture in order to eat healthy, right? We're doing it because we don't want pain. And, we want to
And one thing I
take
must
care of
say,
our bodies. That's it. And our brains. So we don't, because I know all of you have experienced people who are dealing with low grade inflammation all the time because of obesity. They're dealing with hormonal imbalance. So it makes them nasty people, right? Like when they talk to you, they sound like passive aggressive. They're irritable. They have all these mood swings, right? We don't want to be these people, especially if we call ourselves Christians and we're walking in Christ. We want to be the light of Christ. So we need to really take care of this brain so we could show up as our best selves all the time, right? That's why we do it. It's not about throwing away your culture.
no.
But yes, saltfish, will ruin your brain. You know why? Because the toxicity in the fish, all fish, big, small, it don't matter where you get it from, right? There is DDT, right, which is a toxic carcinogenic chemical. There are microplastics, which is an endocrine disruptor, throw your hormone balance off, and that will mess up your brain function. And then, of course, you also have heavy metals.
I think the codfish is from China, if I'm not mistaken. Chinese control it.
And all water, someone asked me this in a talk before about like, what about if it's from this lake or this ocean or my understanding is all the water is touching and connecting. So it's like, it doesn't matter where in the world you're picking up this fish. Like
Right. Yeah.
DDT, microplastics, and literally we know the plastic pollution in the water has touched everywhere, so that is not making a difference. Like we're no longer in the time of when Jesus turned water into wine and he fed all these people. That fish, I don't know what was going on with that fish. I'm pretty sure it was a way healthier fish, But this fish now is sick. It's sick, toxic fish. You don't want any of that. They're finding plastic in the brain now. They're finding plastic in placenta, and we're wondering why so many young people are having problems having kids. It's not just the women, it's the men with weak and unhealthy semen as well. Like both, everybody is being affected, right? And then you have women with hormonal imbalances, painful periods, obesity they can't explain, or trouble with getting the fat off and keeping it off and all this kinds of stuff. We are inflamed because of the toxins in our environment, and you are adding to that load when you eat fish, okay? So saltfish is one of them. Then you have curry goat, oxtail, jerk chicken, and pork, which, yes, they typically eat. Stew peas, brown stewed chicken, pepper steak. You remember all these foods?
I still make stew peas
How you make your stew peas?
the vegetarian way, no meat. And it come out just as nice as
And this episode was inspired by someone who made a comment on one of the videos about like, how does your Jamaican family deal with all this change, and hopefully I'm getting across that it's just minor tweaks you have to make, because before veganism, there was ITAL. And ITAL, the Rastas, just like Seventh-day Adventists, do you have a group of Seventh-day Adventists that don't do any animal product at all, right? Because they say that their religion, the Bible tells them not to do that. But then you have other Seventh-day Adventists that's like, nope, I'm eating my pork, or or whatever. Probably not pork, but they're chicken. Yeah, they'll eat chicken or fish or whatever.
Yeah, and meat. Yeah.
Yeah. So for some reason they have a cutoff line at the pork, and other SDAs they say no animal product, right? In the Rastafari community, right, there's like this basically the same, right? You have a group of them that don't do any animal product, and then a group of them that they'll have some chicken and stuff like this.
And they'll have fish.
Yeah, and they have their logic and rationale as to why, So, but the reason why I say that is because you go to any Jamaican restaurant, they will have ITAL food on the menu, right? If it's a legit Jamaican restaurant, okay, legit, right? Of not someone who think they could just make Jamaican food, because you have to understand Jamaican culture. If you're serving the Jamaican community, you have ITAL, people who are following the ITAL lifestyle. They're not going to eat any animal product, right? But that don't mean they're not using the Scotch bonnet and the cayenne and the ginger and the curry and all these different, spices and stuff. That's, There's another one I'm thinking of that is...
The patties, because when they make patties, like vegetarian patties, they cannot use the same crust that they use to make chicken patty or beef patties. They have to be different, because the crust is made from animal fat.
Yeah. So there you go with the patties. Okay. Then you have soups and stews, right? So online I read that Saturday soups are a cultural ritual. That wasn't my ritual. So tell me about that, Ma. Tell me about the Saturday soup ritual.
Soup is where I'm from in Catadupa, we only have meat on Saturday or Sunday, because they slaughter the cow on Friday. They butcher the cow on Friday, and the inspector have to come. So by the time the inspector come and so to inspect the meat to make sure the meat is right, I don't know, they don't inspect the meat before the cow. I don't know they do it. But by Saturday we get our whatever we're gonna use from the cow to make soup. And it can be anything from the cow. Okay. I won't go into details, but it can be anything from the cow.
Yeah, I remember at one point I got into tripe, which is the cow intestines. When you hear it, it's like, ooh, but then you taste it and you're like, oh, okay.
When you're from the culture, and I grew up in it, because when you grew up in that culture, it don't come in like nothing to you. It's just a way of, but
because you learn everything. Like, we learn to eat all these things, and that's a really great point, I think, for parents, is that it's the same thing when you start to indoctrinate kids on candies, then they develop a palate for it. And then you have that dopamine response in the brain, which, regular whole food will never reach that level of sweetness that the candy, So now you've created an addiction cycle in your child that they then have to fight through, right? And you have people around in the community that kind of just reinforce it, right? They think they're doing something good by bringing candies to kids, because and
they show love.
Yeah. So there's a whole cultural shift that needs to happen there. But the Saturday soup, so you have red pea soup, manish water.
Not on Saturday. On Saturday you don't do red peas. You do pea soup on Thursdays.
Oh, specific soups on So why you can't have red pea soup on a Saturday, Ma? Tell me.
Because we use salted beef to make pea soup. You don't use fresh beef to make pea soup. You use fresh beef to make If you're gonna do a soup with pumpkin and vegetable, use fresh beef. That's how we usually do it.
Okay.
But
So it has
that's
to it has to do with basically when the animal is slaughtered and when you have the thing, the
yeah,
day it lands on.
exactly. Because the
And
meat
you
have to
know,
be
this is
good.
a prime example because this is, and we go back to something that we've talked about a lot, where it's like when we say plant based, which Jamaican cuisine, Jamaican culture, historically, ancestrally, has always been plant based. As you're saying, you would have the animal food one day a week, basically, on the weekend.
Yeah.
Where in America, people are having it breakfast, lunch, dinner, 7 days a week, and they're supersizing, you know? So, plant based is definitely healthier. You have the blue zones, they're not necessarily vegan, right? Which is completely, you don't have animal product at all. But they're living to 100 and beyond, and they're, you know, being able to operate well with their bodies and do all the work and physical labor that they're used to, um, with the plant-based diet, right? Because it's you know, low inflammation, plus there's some other lifestyle aspects, the communal aspect, the spiritual aspect, right? All of these
Yeah.
cultures, they worship in some shape or fashion, you know.
Because even our breakfast food, Sam, not to cut you, our breakfast food is roast breadfruit with callaloo. That was one of my favorite.
Which you
And
can still have as a vegan.
but that's what I'm getting ready to say. When I do roast breadfruit here, I have it with my favorite salad, or I have it with spinach, steamed spinach. Just nuke the spinach. You don't even have to steam it. Just nuke it to bring it down to a level, and put whatever seasoning you want. And it's very delicious. So this is what I'm saying, that you don't have to deprive yourself of having your culture food. It's just that I personally put the spin on it, and I find that I'm still embracing my culture.
Yeah.
Rid of it completely.
Then, of course, the vegetables and the greens. Callaloo, which I love. Cabbage, pak choy. These are all usually steamed or sauteed, which if you're going to cook, this is a healthier way to cook because you keep, when you have cooked with water, it keeps the nutrients in. Um, Also boiled okra, which I never got into okra.
I love, well, let me tell you,
I mean, I might
okra,
as well eat a snail. Like,
it's one of my favorite things. But you know something? It's not Jamaican now to make okra. Because you're not supposed to cook it till it gets slimy. No. You saute,
because I've
you
always only
saute
seen
it.
it slimy.
You don't boil it. You saute it. Saute it with a little steam. You put a little bit of water, you put your seasoning, and you keep turning it over until it's supposed to be nice and crunchy, not slimy. And I love okra. Okra and string bean makes I call that a meat dish for me. Beautiful.
Yeah, I will need to. So for me, you know, I think people would be surprised to know I'm really a picky eater.
Definitely.
I'm a picky eater. I don't even know how I get like. That's why I think like this whole change was
This is
God
what
saving my life because I was anti everything green before I got into veganism, honestly. And then when I got into healthy eating, like, you know, obviously watching somebody you love die in a very aggressive and painful manner, that will do it, you know? But like now I find myself, I'm so comfortable with what I like. Like I like Brussels sprouts and I like it a certain way. I like cauliflower and I like it a certain way, you know? So I'm in a pattern now back to my childhood where I'm kind of stuck in my ways. I have to get to a place where I'm in an adventurous mood or season to maybe try okra again because I only remember the slime. I literally remember you eating it, slurping up the
but
slime.
I never make it though. Someone make it for me, but I know how to fix it for it to taste nice.
Okay, and then yes,
And you
escovitch
can also air
vegetables.
fry it. It's very nice when you air fry it. It's a nice snack. Season it and air fry it.
Escovitch vegetables. I mean, you could escovitch, I think, just about anything, but escovitch, that's pickled carrots, peppers, onions. Are
Because they
we
have
missing?
extra rich fish. But
Yeah.
you can use king oyster mushroom, and you escovitch it just the same way you escovitch fish. And to you still use your the nori, grounded nori,
Mm-hmm.
to make it the seaweed, to make it, give it the fishy taste.
Ah.
And you escovitch it, because I do that.
You add that after the cooking, right? Not while it's cooking.
No, you cook the king oyster first. You whatever way you want to do it. You can even air fry it. And then you make up your escovitch and pour it over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you sprinkle the nori on it?
To make, yes. You put the nori. What you do, you put the nori in the escovitch, because remember now your fish is dry, so
Mm-hmm.
you put the nori in the escovitch. So when you pour it all over it, now it takes in all that into the king oyster mushroom.
Yeah.
It's very delicious.
And then, of course, in Jamaica, right, you have mangoes growing everywhere. Coconuts, like, that you just chop open and drink right there. You scrape out the jelly, you eat the jelly. Bananas, guava, soursop. I think we did a whole series going through all the fruits and vegetables of all the Caribbean islands back in 2020, 2021. So if you guys
Right.
look through YouTube or even look on my podcast, the Raw Food Health Empowerment Podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts, we did a whole series. There are blog posts associated with that on rawfoodmealplanner.com. You can go through that. But the land, I mean, Ma, you growing up with your siblings, I mean, that was your snacks all day, every day. Just climb a tree, get your snack, enjoy it.
Free. You take a stick and push the fruit, whatever you want, and it come right down.
There you go.
We have loaded. Just go there and pick one.
Yeah. And then in terms of baked goods and treats, we talked about festival. Festival's one of those. Johnny cakes. I don't know what's in a Johnny cake, but I'm assuming eggs.
No, if you're talking bulla cake, no, I don't think they use those things to make. Bulla cake?
Not bullet. Well, bulla.
What?
Definitely bulla. Huh?
No, there's no egg in bulla cake.
So how you make bulla?
You put ginger and sugar and all those kind of stuff in there. Use baking soda or use baking powder, but you don't put.
Oh, so bulla is vegan.
Bulla can be vegan, yeah.
Can be, or is made vegan?
Well, let me tell you, bulla is not. You don't have no meat in it, so.
Well, clearly, but is there any dairy or eggs in there?
No egg in bulla cake.
So then what would make you question if it's vegan or not?
Well, I don't know. But
have you ever made bulla?
Never try, because it's not something I like.
I love bulla. Now I'm gonna go research to find out.
You know what I don't like about it? It's just
the sugar, though. Probably,
yeah.
I probably wouldn't be able to have it because of sugar. But I mean, if you got a recipe, that's the thing. When I don't really make baked goods, because the baking soda and all this kinds of stuff, I tend to try to stay away from. All these foods are very drying, and it just pulls me further away from raw foods, which is where my body feels best. You know.
Yes.
So I just tend to not do it. But I used to love bulla. I loved bulla, especially the outside where it's more like crusty. Oh man.
Yeah. And then you have bun and cheese, which the bun is vegan, because there's no egg in bun.
No, but you're gonna have sugar. I think
it's a lot of sugar, but I'm saying I could make bun if I want, but I don't really crave for things like that, because anything that has to do with sugar, I stay away from it.
Yeah.
Or anything with sweetness, I try to stay away from it. And I was a sweet tooth at a long time ago, but I stay away from sweeteners. The bun, I could make the bun if I want to, but I'm not a bun person, or because all those things have to put some kind of sweetener in it. So.
And then there are the drinks. sorrel, ginger beer, roots tonics, carrot juice with condensed milk. And that's something really important to know if you travel to Jamaica and you're like, oh, carrot juice. Be careful, the carrot juice is not necessarily vegan or healthy. So,
Carrots are healthy.
but the carrot juice, the way it's made in
With
Jamaican
the carrot.
restaurants,
And you know
yeah.
what I never can understand, and I always question this. Why would you do carrot and then put milk, condensed milk in it? It just
To
kills
make it
it.
even sweeter.
Because the carrot itself is so sweet.
Yeah.
When I make carrot juice, I have to put celery in it to cut out most of that sweetness.
Yeah.
So I don't see it's necessary.
And then we have our herbal teas: fever grass, cerasee, mint, um, you know, all the stuff. So basically, I went through this whole thing so we could have a foundation of when we talk about Jamaican cuisine, what exactly is it, right? And you could see it leans heavy on plants, but now in 2025, you see when Jamaicans are eating, they're putting a lot of meat on the plate. In my opinion, this is first, let me say, before my opinion, first, let me say, this is not our ancestral way of eating, number one. And number two, in my opinion, this is learned behavior from American culture. Anyone who has engaged with American culture, regardless if they're on the land or not, has basically learned and seen the sickness of what has led us into this obesity crisis and metabolic dysfunction, right? Most of Americans are dealing with metabolic dysfunction because of how we're eating. People outside of America, from,
The Europeans, a lot of the Europeans are
yeah, and I'm talking about countries where you have people of color are predominant, right? This is where, like, they're predominant. So Africa, and like even in some African countries, you'll see like folks are doing heavy meat. Ancestrally, they were not doing this, you understand? And they're doing a lot of Fanta and like these sugar sweetened beverages, right? Colas and all this stuff. It's like, where did they learn this? And it's American culture that has been exported out. And people, I guess the status of America, how people see America from outside of America, especially in the Caribbean. They think America is the land of what? Honey,
milk and honey. Yeah.
yeah. And they hold it on this high pedestal, right? That it's, and so they want to eat like Americans, dress like Americans, all this stuff. Meanwhile, folks are over here struggling because of this type of culture, It's not healthy. Just because something is popular, it doesn't make it healthy. And this is what we're seeing and we're learning and understanding. Like the traditional ancestral way Jamaicans have always eaten has been plant-based and is a pretty healthy diet.
You miss out one drink.
What
Cane
are them?
juice. Cane juice.
Oh, cane juice. Yes. Sugar cane juice.
No, it's not sugar. But they don't put sugar in the cane. The cane grow that way, sweet.
But it's called sugar cane.
Sugar cane. But they call it sugar cane. Well, we call it cane juice, but they call it sugar cane because they use that juice and boil it down into sugar.
Yeah.
So when you drink cane juice, you can't consume too much of it.
And me personally, growing up, I didn't drink cane juice, but I ate sugar cane, which, obviously you're not getting the same effect as like drinking sugar cane juice, because that's straight up lots of sugar to the bloodstream. I don't know.
That's
I've never actually looked into any data or research around how sugarcane juice affects, folks who are pre-diabetic and what that's doing to the blood sugar. Like if it would be comparable to, I don't know,
sure
some other
fiber.
like whole food, because sugarcane itself has so much fiber. You have to do so much work with your teeth to get the juice out. And I would more go in that direction if you want sugarcane juice versus to drink sugarcane juice, you know?
Right. Right.
Um, but so while the traditional Jamaican diet includes real whole foods, it's also very cooked, as we talked about. It's heavy, often uses animal fats, which can be high in sugar. And you heard my mom mention, like, basically she eats most of those foods, right? She doesn't have the meat, dairy, eggs, but a lot of the stuff that was meat, dairy, um, stuff, you know, you're just making it different, right? You still escovitch, but you're not escoviching fish, you know? You just, so it's like there's not really much of a change. Now, for those who may be asking, what about the raw foods, right? That's where all the fruits come into play, which, yes, we continue to have that in abundance and enjoy it, right?
And
Mangoes, coconuts,
and salads, a lot of salads.
a lot of salads, you
Yeah.
know, and you know, I'm sure your choice for those of you watching to go high raw isn't just about food, but about reclaiming your health legacy, especially with rising rates of dementia, neurodegenerative diseases. Dementia is more common in older adults. However, hundreds of thousands of people are diagnosed with young onset dementia each year. And there was an extensive study published in 2023 that talked about why. A team of researchers identified 15 different lifestyle and health factors associated with young onset dementia risk. And they looked at data collected on 356,052 people, right? So this is a pretty good data set of people aged under 65 in the UK, and they found low socioeconomic status, social isolation, hearing impairment, stroke, diabetes, heart disease, and depression were all associated with a higher risk of young onset dementia. Um, Now, obviously, when we start talking about socioeconomic status, this is more a correlation, and we could probably dive deeper into another episode as to why people even bring this up into studies. You know, I get a little bit annoyed, but there is a point to this, because when we're talking about dementia, continuous learning is a part of keeping the brain youthful and strong. And so, you know, it's more of like the lifestyle, right? Folks who are not low socioeconomic, they tend to have maybe some degrees that put them in professions where they have to continue to learn. For example, like a lawyer, you know, even if you've been doing, I don't know, corporate law for 40 years, you're still learning new things all the time. You know, criminal law, you're still learning new things. If you're a physician, there's always new science, you know, coming online. So it's like, you know, you're always learning, and I think that is part of it. Plus, you need money to buy healthy stuff, to put yourself in a neighborhood where maybe there's not a gas station next door, some kind of toxic chemicals in the environment. You know, some of these things, that's how, you know, they're affecting these groups. But you know, when we're talking about stroke, diabetes, heart disease, depression, which is a metabolic issue as well, you know, this is why, right? This is the why behind the change. It's not about, oh, you know, I'm Jamaican and I have to eat my curry goat, you know, because, like, I mean, I've never really understood that mindset.
That's what the tongue does for you.
It's like, am I gonna be kicked out of my family because I actually want to keep my health and not die a painful death? You know,
Not,
that's
not if
crazy to me.
not if the family is very smart. No.
I mean, if the family loves you and cares about you, it shouldn't be an issue, number one. And if they don't care about you, then you leave and create your own family. Because I'm not above, I'm not above leaving toxic people, and those toxic people could be related to me. I'm not above doing that to save myself. You know, I've never had the mindset of a sacrificial lamb. I don't know what, you know, I don't know what it is to be like that, you know? So there's that. you know. Vitamin D deficiency and high levels of C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation. These are also linked to higher risk of brain deterioration and young onset dementia. Obviously, if you have the genetic component of like APOE4 gene in one or both of your parents, yes, you're more likely to get dementia. But the thing is that even if you have this gene, genetics only account for like 10 to 20% of anything when it comes to dementia, when it comes to cancer. So it's like, it's a non-factor really, because I like to focus on what we have control over, and we have control over a lot, especially even if your genes predispose you to something and you take care of the stuff you have control over, you don't have to get the thing, you know? So to me, that makes this stuff, the stuff I have control over, a higher priority, you know? Right. So, you know, I don't know about you, Ma, because I know you've had experiences with family where you felt like you were facing some judgment. I don't feel like I personally have, because I was more on the like pushing it on people in front. But you know, just trying to do your thing.
Which is okay, because I don't worry about that anymore. I have arrived. I've reached a stage in my life that I don't worry about what people think or say of me. I am going to do what's good for me and what's best for me. And what is good and best for me could be good for you. You also are the person criticizing me. So it's best for them to just stop, say less, look more, and think about what they're about to say.
Yeah, I like that. Say less, look more.
Yeah, because I see people approach me, ask me certain questions. I mean, and it makes me feel good for somebody to approach me and says, I need to give you a call because I love how you look. I want to know what you're doing too. It makes me feel good. I feel like I'm doing it for myself and I'm doing it for somebody else also.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid to share what I did and how it helped and how it is still helping me. But I'm not afraid. I'm quite okay with it.
Yeah, so we're gonna...
is what you see, when someone criticizes me, it depends on how I respond to it.
Yes.
Don't have a problem with that.
Because this whole health journey is really, it's a personal one.
It is a personal one. And it's not a selfish one either. Because somebody asks me, I'm not going to volunteer and give people information, and because you know when people don't care. But if somebody asks me, how do you do it? I says, here's my phone number. Give me a call.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about plantains. How could we not talk about plantains? That one's another staple, which you never... I made raw plantains the other day. You could do in the dehydrator. So it's like, yeah, all this stuff. I remember like a year or two ago, I created like a recipe book with even a Jamaican mango sorbet with lime.
Yes.
Yeah, we had all sorts of stuff. You know, I put cayenne, ginger, all sorts of things.
See, we discussed plantain before, but not on this platform. But I remember we talked about plantain, and I said you don't have to fry plantain. I couldn't tell the years I fry plantain.
Yeah.
I put plantain in the air fryer. I don't put nothing on it, because people say, oh, but if you put stuff in the air fryer, if you put oil. No, you don't. Whatever you want to put in it, whatever season. As a matter of fact, I like cayenne pepper and everything. I'm just a cayenne pepper girl. So I'll sprinkle it. I slice the plantain and I sprinkle cayenne pepper and I put it in the air fryer. It's the best plantain you could ever have. It's very delicious.
Yeah.
So,
and I think like if you want to make the spices stick, I've used apple cider vinegar to season and put in the air fryer.
But remember, the plantain is not the one I put in the air fryer is not the green one. It's the semi-ripe plantain.
I use completely ripe plantain to, you know.
So you don't have to put none on it to make it thick because
it's slimy.
Ripe,
yeah.
Everything sticks in it.
Yeah.
Delicious. Very nice.
Yes, good point.
But I couldn't tell the last day I buy plantain.
Yeah, my last few from Trader Joe's weren't that great, and it just kind of killed it for me. I had a good run this past winter.
Let me tell you, I have a problem with plantain because I bought plantain, and I don't know if anybody, on this thing know, or people who listen ever experience it from Costco. The plantain, them look like they're man-made. when you cut them, because I'm not familiar with plantain look like that.
What do you mean?
They don't look like plantain on the inside when I slice them. That's not how I know plantain to be. As a matter of fact, plantain supposed to have little seeds.
Ah, yeah.
These
We're
have no seeds.
we're in the time of seedless everything, and there are a lot of folks who have problems with that. Like they especially in the raw food community, there are folks who are like, this stuff is or more like the alkaline, the people who follow Sebi, because the seedless foods are
Genetic.
hybridized.
Oh,
They're not genetically, because
they're not.
if for something to be certified USDA organic, they are by definition not GMO.
Oh,
But the seedless stuff are hybridized. And the problem metabolically for us with those foods is that these foods tend to have a higher sugar level, right? So if you were to compare a plantain with seeds compared to a plantain without seeds, the one without seeds has higher sugar content than the one with seeds. However, um, I think the something has happened, because I remember when I was a youth, like it would be so rare to find grapes without seeds, and that used to get
because
on my nerves.
because we had to take out on I used to remove every seed from your grape
I
that
had
you
to spit on that. It's like, oh, it's like always seeds. And now all the grapes now, it's hard for you to find grapes with seeds,
There
So
was this, yeah. So I
so
don't
this
mind you.
happened in the last 30 years, like all this, change.
Watermelon. Watermelon is the same thing. Seedless watermelon.
Yeah, it's hard
Yeah.
to find seeded. Yeah,
I
yeah.
I found one today with seed. Thank God.
Yeah, that's like a big deal. I mean, when people find seeded, they go on social media and they just celebrate.
Yeah, I'm
you know.
celebrating because the seeds you can eat the seeds. It's good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think somewhere along the line, like, cuz farmers, they're running a business, right? And so the market must have told them people prefer not to deal with seeds.
I don't think so. I
I'm
think I
assuming.
okay. What they do, the seedless stuff move faster. It goes faster. Like they produce
Yeah.
it fast. Than wait on something to grow. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is.
So now it's hard to even find the other stuff.
We are in a
So
survival mode. That's what it is.
we're in a
Everything
what?
is survival mode. We're only surviving with what we are getting.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for those of you watching us live, thank you so much for joining us live. Feel free to drop questions, concerns in the comments. Like I said, this topic was inspired by a viewer. So, if you know who you are, I will be responding to your comment with the link to this thing. Um, but thank you so much for the tip, so we can just have this conversation and air it out basically for everybody. You do not need to throw away your ancestral, and I don't recommend that at all. Like, the foods you like, you don't necessarily have to get rid of it to eat healthier. You just
Put a
tweak.
spin
Yeah.
it. Yeah, put a
Yeah.
spin it. And I am enjoying Jamaican food because I do it the way that I feel comfortable with it, you know?
Yeah.
So put a spin on it. That's all.
Hey Juan, thanks so much for the heart. Thanks for tuning in. Before we wrap up for the day, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the problems that I know some of you are facing, because I know this is going to come up maybe for folks who are watching the replay. Issues that you guys have been having, things that I've heard. Like, for example, you're expected to cook for everyone else, right? So there are many women, especially in the Jamaican culture, that are still expected to prepare full meals for family members who eat traditionally. Um, but, Ma, you're here to tell us how we don't have to do that. I mean,
Well,
I didn't take on this role as a traditional, so
we don't have to do it because This funny thing is like I feel personally feel, and I don't push things onto people. But if I invite people to my house, I don't have to tell them beforehand what they're getting. When they come to my house to sit around the table to eat, I'm gonna present them something delicious and nice,
Hmm.
something that they'll want to have again. So I will introduce them my new way of my new menu, and it will still be Jamaican food, but it will be prepared the way I prepare it. You understand? There
Yep.
won't be no meat or fish, but you'll have meat-like tasting food, like king oyster mushroom, which is I love it because it's just as chewy as beef. And you use your seasoning that you normally season meat with. And this is what I tell people: meat don't have no taste until it's seasoned. Chicken don't have no taste until it's seasoned. Fish don't have no taste until it's seasoned. So whatever you're doing, just season things the way that you would normally season your fish, chicken, and meat, and you get the taste. So I wouldn't have a problem with my guests, no.
Yes. And then even the people living in your house, because I hear a lot of women, oh, I cook for my husband, I cook for my kids, and the kids are grown, but they still cooking for them.
No, you know
Um,
something? I don't have a problem with my husband. He enjoy my cooking. He enjoy whatever I prepare. I don't have a problem with it. Okay, so sometimes he might want a piece of fish, yes. And I told you before, I'll make him salmon fish once a week, only on Sunday. But he don't go there away and says, "Oh, I have to have this." No, he's not that type of Jamaican husband. No. Mm.
yeah, and for you, I mean, you don't feel, I guess, and I've never heard this. I've never heard anybody complain that they are tempted to eat fish, but I've heard, tempted to eat other types of meat, but I don't think fish has the same pull. It's like, so it seems to be okay with making it for somebody else without you falling prey to eating it.
Oh no, no, I never tempted to. No, 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 not even to taste it, because I know the season what to put on it, and I always ask him, "How does it taste?" He always say pretty good. So I've just continued doing it the way I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't deprive him because that's what he wants. I give it to him, but I'm not fixing no meat or chicken in here.
Yeah. And this is, to me, like operating out of like Christ consciousness, right? Because if you go back to Genesis, Adam and Eve, God gave them a choice. You can eat from the tree of life or you can eat from the tree of knowledge, but you're probably not going to want to eat from the tree of knowledge. He warned them, don't eat there. But of course, curiosity got the best of both of them, actually, right? Because Eve didn't eat by herself. So, but God always gives us free will. And so for us, even with this, maybe you don't agree, that's not what you're doing, whatever, uh, but it's their choice. And
Well, let me tell you, I do the change for healthy living because I don't want to just live. I want a life. And I give God thanks every day I get up and I feel like I have life in my body. There's nothing stopping me that I have to take this medicine because I can't do this. I have a life and I'm living this life and I give God thanks that He's enabling me to do all the things that I'm doing to stay healthy. So
yeah.
that's why, yeah.
So here's another problem. People say, oh, you look too skinny. In Jamaican culture, weight loss is often viewed as a sickness, not health. And that can be triggering if your family doesn't understand your intentional lifestyle. And I talk about it all the time, right? Because there are some circles in the health and wellness community where people are talking about diet culture and all this. For me, as a Jamaican American coming from Queens, New York, I know my community, my culture, they like to have the bumper to, to bend up and whine and shake and flash. You have Carnival coming up, and it's like when you look at Carnival, um, people are of all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they wearing very little. They're not ashamed of anything. Throwing anything around. So like this whole thing about looking a certain way, I don't know that it translates that much into Jamaican West Indian culture at large, right? Because, you know, just into the history, you know, when people lost weight, it was usually because they were malnourished, like didn't have enough food, right? And that's kind of probably like the appeal of the American lifestyle of abundance, you know, like because you have all this, it must be better, you know. Now we're not talking about quality, it's like quantity, because we're coming from a place of lack, from a trauma. It's a trauma response, actually. You know, there was a time when there was so much lack. And so when people say that to you, oh, you look too skinny, just understand it's a trauma response. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding. They don't know what they say. Like Jesus on the cross, when he says, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." Because even when people say this to people on a health journey, it can really stop people in their tracks. You know, you can be derailing folks, and it's unfortunate. But these folks are not scientists. They're not doctors. They're not physicians. They're not coaches. They're not even health literate, you know. So you can't really take what they're saying too seriously.
And they don't say you look skinny in Jamaica. They say you're mager.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they make it sound even worse. But I love what you say, Ma. When people don't pick up what you're putting down, what you say, Jesus, when you wipe your foot off, how does it
When
go?
they don't, you just wipe your foot and move away from there and don't return.
Don't return. Yeah, because you don't need that negative energy, that ignorance coming at you, right?
You want to surround yourself by people with positive energy at all times.
Yes.
And you can give them that energy. They have to be the one who acquire it into their life. So those people drain you when they're around you, you know. So, I mean, I don't like the crowd really. I like the quality, not the crowd, the quality. Yeah.
Yeah. The other problem, sticking to raw foods can feel emotionally distant from the comforting smells and spices of a Jamaican kitchen. Now, yeah, we talked a lot today about the cooked foods, right? Obviously, they're raw foods. We talked about the fruits. Mommy mentioned salads and things, right? And with the salads, in the dressing itself, you can have all this seasoning and flavor and all this kinds of stuff. So there's just many different ways to do it. Because really, when you get to understand raw cuisine and raw gourmet specifically, you can, the world is your oyster. You throw whatever spices from your culture on there, regardless of where. Like, you know, it could be Asian, Filipino, it could be Italian, whatever, right? You just throw your spice, and you're using different things to mimic like the traditional stuff,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
So you don't lose that in raw cuisine. You just have to, you know, what is it that you're looking to get? Like, what is it that you want? And then you maybe work with a coach, work with somebody who knows how to do it, pick up a book or something. Get into those raw recipe books, because once you learn the nuance of how they're doing it, you could just swap out the spices, you know?
Yeah. Even with pop choy, when you have it raw, you can add a little soy,
The coconut
sauce.
aminos.
Yes, or the light soy, They have the
Yeah, I
light soy.
wouldn't do the soy sauce. I would avoid the soy sauce, but definitely the coconut aminos I think would be good.
Why wouldn't you use the light? It's not salty. What?
The sodium.
It's like it's light, very little sodium.
And soy has some estrogen mimicking components, and I know some people will say, "Oh, but they've done studies that show that it's good estrogen or whatever." No, there is a healthy soy. Soy sauce is not it. You know what I'm saying? Soy sauce, you're not getting a benefit, and it's high
What
sodium.
I use? Maybe I'm using it wrong. It's not. It's
Hopefully,
that's
you're
on
using coconut aminos.
coconut aminos and another one.
Coconut aminos has no soy because it's coming from the sap of the coconut tree.
Yeah, no, I use that. I use coconut aminos and I use aminos by itself.
Liquid
Uh,
aminos is soy.
really?
Yeah.
I use that.
Yeah, liquid aminos is soy, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Um,
The coconut aminos, I use it to make my veggies. Like when I steam my veggies, I put it in
Juan says, hello, Dorrell and Samantha. It would be okay to eat some steamed root veggies and cruciferous occasionally in the context of a raw diet. Thanks a lot. I personally, I follow a bio-individual strategy when it comes to nutrition. And raw foods are very helpful for improving metabolic health and achieving certain health goals quickly and effectively, right? However, being a militant 100% raw doesn't make sense for everybody. Because what is most important if you're trying to be really healthy, right, and avoid any health issues and complications, especially when it comes to the integrity of your gut, you need to pay attention to the foods that your body is responding well to. And if it gets too limiting, if you have so many food sensitivities to raw foods, right, to all these different raw foods, that it gets to be so limiting, that's where you have some of these really small, rare cases that, the community loves to blow up. You see vegans blowing up, oh, this raw food person died of emaciation and blah, 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 because these people they were doing raw foods, but they didn't have any health literacy, or maybe they had a certain philosophy. They wanted to die on that hill as an experimentation. Well, they did. You understand? But everything that I'm sharing is evidence-based and evidence-informed. But also, we have to listen to the body, right? Listen to the body. Develop what I do with my clients. We develop interoceptive awareness so that you can tune in to how your body is feeling and how it's responding to the foods that you're eating. Right? We don't compromise our health for it, right? If you're having gut issues and stuff like this, we're not running towards processed foods and stuff, right? We want to optimize health. Raw foods has a place in that, but being 100% raw for everybody does not work, So yes, to your point, steamed root vegetables and cruciferous vegetables, if you want to and it feels good and you enjoy, absolutely. You don't lose anything.
But if you want some
doing that.
You can have your fruits, your fruits also, which you don't cook.
Yes.
I don't like cook or steam fruits. I like my fruits the way they are.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I can't understand how some people are doing that. Like why would you waste a good fruit? Like, why? Yes. So let me see. Are there any other things that you've heard people struggle with? I want to make this video very thorough. This will be the end of the conversation on it.
Well, they'll be able to comment, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can leave a comment. I think we've addressed just about everything. That's why I feel like, we've slowed down, and of course new stuff is coming online. We could be talking all day, every day when it comes to all the new information that's coming out on, nutrition science and all that. But the information is that stuff is interesting to the health nerds, right? But in terms of actually doing the thing, right? That's the most important thing. For me, on this platform is we know what we need to be doing. Why is it so difficult to actually execute on that? That to me is the real thing. And I think a lot of that has to do with our psychological and emotional well-being, our social life, and also our metabolic functionality, right? Because if we are having hormonal imbalance, this will trigger certain feelings that will push us to unhealthy eating. And so then we struggle. So there's like a mental health component and also the biological component. And I'm more concerned about that stuff because I think we've pretty much hit the point where people are aware that they need to be eating more plants, more fiber, more water, more movement, more social interaction, more love, more more spirituality, you know?
This is the best time of year for it too, when the weather getting very warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a
Yeah,
good
good
time.
point. Yeah, good
Very
point.
good time to start. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Get the blender out. Get your
Your
ice
power
cream
green.
maker
Yeah.
out.
Get out your power green and start make some smoothie.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Start with your kale and your spinach and your chard and
I think there's one last thing I want to tackle before we wrap up. Folks being surrounded by fried food and disapproval from family members, and that triggering self-doubt or relapse. And this is what I would have to say for you if you're in this situation. I would say have grace with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't reprimand yourself. This is a journey. Some people have it easier than others. And I'm going to say that for me personally, and I learned this only in doing this work, like being out in community and pushing this information. I have done a lot of self-reflection, that and acknowledge the fact that I have had I would say an easier time, because all the things God made it so that this path was easier for me compared to some other folks. And why are folks having a harder time? Why is that their path? I don't know. All of us are on a different journey. But when you overcome it, you now have a testimony you can share and help others. And so I would just say have grace with yourself. Don't beat yourself up because stress is a killer. It is a killer. So don't make this healthy, fun lifestyle so stressful that you are now creating dysfunction and disease in your body, right? And, you relapse, you get back on, The wagon is still there even if you fell off. Just get right back on the wagon, and just keep going at it. What did you learn from that situation? What can you do differently next time to stay consistent? Just be a little bit more curious instead of beating yourself up.
Exactly. Take baby steps.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Ma?
Not at the moment. No, not at the moment. I
Well,
think we have a.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the person who, and I can't remember the name, but I will be reaching out with this link to respond to your comment. Thank you for that. If any of you have any other ideas that you want us to touch on, I will be sure. I know I promised somebody else to talk about something. It's in my notes, okay? I have it organized in my notes. We'll get back to it at some point. But thank you all for joining us live. Thank you, Juan, for engaging with us and being here. Appreciate you. And for those of you watching the replay, just say hey in the comments. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.
Take care.